Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So I am back with another D&D minis related video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage Halaster's Lab Premium set, published or put out by WizKids. So this is a set of minis along the same line sort of as like the spell effects that I did videos for previously. These are sort of dressing to help bring the Dungeon of the Mad Mage to life. So this is, like I said, this is referred to as a premium set and retails for $49.99 US. The Canadian price would be probably around $60. And this is something that, honestly, I didn't pay for this. It was lent to me by a friend of mine who ended up picking it up himself. Because this wasn't even something that was really on my radar, but we'll have a look at it and try to see if it is worth the $50 or $60 or more, depending on where you live, that they're charging for this. So we'll go ahead and just take a look at the packaging first. As you can see, a couple of the minis have actually come loose in the packaging. It's still sealed. It hasn't been opened yet. He didn't even open it before lending it to me. So I guess I'll have the honors of that. But you get to see the minis here. And on the back, there's an advertisement for the Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage booster packs that you can get. And we have the, just again, images of the products a bit closer up. And we see the contents. So, there are 2 preserved corpse laying. Whoop. Trying to avoid the glare there. So 2 preserved corpse laying, 2 preserved corpse grasping. 1 bookshelf with dragon skull, 1 large standing candle, or sorry, 2 large standing candles, ghost lantern, summoning circle, Baylor claw, hand and eye of Vecna, pseudo dragon on a perch, giant hourglass, book pile, familiar cage, Halaster's wardrobe, wizard table, regular table, and an inactive shield guardian. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this open, pop all the minis out, because this is probably going to be a pain to get some of these out, and we'll come back and I'll have all that stuff taken care of. Alright, so I managed to get everything out, and it was kind of an ordeal. So the plastic tray hold some of these in really tight, to the fact that the only way to get these out is sort of push from the back. And I was actually really worried about, especially the hourglass. The hourglass was probably the hardest thing to get out. It was the last thing I actually managed to pull out of the tray. And I thought I was going to wreck the packaging to do, but which, you know, if you own it yourself, it's not a big deal. You could just sort of put them in something else if you want to. But keep in mind, this was lent to me by a friend, so I want to be able to give it back to him in relatively decent shape. One cool thing I'll say about the inside of the packaging, and I don't know how well it's going to show up with the glare and everything, but there is the image on the inside that mirrors the cover of Dungeon of the Mad Mage to begin with. So you have like Halaster, the Gith Yankee, Mind Flare, and the Drow Priestess. Again, it's really hard for it to show up on camera, but there's a little bit of a nice touch there. Overall, I think I counted 19 minis in the set, and keep in mind they're charging $49.99 US for this, so for Canadian consumers, it's in the $60 range, and it's either $60 or $65, which is kind of pricey. So for Canadians, it's around $3 or more, or slightly more per mini. And in the US, it's a little over $2 per mini. So, where are we getting good quality for that price? To me, it's kind of a mixed bag. So a lot of these things are really cool looking, but they're kind of small and really easy to lose. And beyond having them for maybe 1 combat, how much are you going to end up using some of these? So anyway, but before I sort of give my final thoughts, let's actually go ahead and just have a look at everything. So I'll start with the summoning circle. And again, it's a pretty cool little detail on it. So that one's actually, you know, kind of nice. I do like this one quite a bit. Then we have our pile of books. And I don't know how well it shows up here, but it looks like this one here on the very top almost looks like it's sort of got like a devil face on it. I don't know if that's supposed to reference the Tomb of Annihilation or not. And then you have another book that honestly see if I can get it to focus. So this is the one that looks like the Tomb of Horrors, almost, sort of, kind of, maybe. And then you've got this one here, which literally just looks like a frowny face. You got like what looks like an eye on the top, a nose, and then you got like the frowny face there. And a lot of the other books are just, they don't have any detail in the covers at all. There are a couple of ones that are open, and I'm sorry if I'm not getting this quite on camera, I'm trying to look at it off to the side. But there are a couple of ones that are open and have a little bit of detail here, so it actually looks like, honestly, this picture here, and I don't know how well it's going to show up, just because of how tiny it is. But this picture here kind of looks like a character, excuse me, with things pointing to it that almost look like, you know, the magic item slots from like 3rd edition. There was a character sheet that had like a silhouetted adventure with all the things sort of pointing to it, so that's kind of neat. And over here, this other open book, and again, I don't know how it's going to show up, looks like it's got some sort of like a golem on one page. So, I mean, there is some cool stuff here overall. But again, most of the books are just sort of a like brown leather color, and that's basically it. So there's some nice details, and then there's a lot of just sort of mundane details that we have here. So we'll look at the hourglass next. I guess I'll show it this way. So the first thing is it actually is kind of lopsided. Now, I don't know if it's supposed to be like in the adventure, if it's sort of angled like this, but it is. The mini that came in this set anyway, and like you can't adjust it at all. So the mini that came in this set, it is like the base is slanted and the top is slanted. So instead of being perfectly straight up, it's got a bit of a lean to it. So again, that could be the way that it's described in the adventure. I'm not 100% on that, but the mini, at least in this particular set, and again, it may be different from different sets, but at least in this one, has a bit of an angle to it, and that might be why it was so difficult to get out in the first place. We'll just set aside the ones that I've already looked at here. Up next, let's take a look at our preserved corpses. And not much to these. They just look like they're basically painted or dry brushed over top of the mini. But there we go, so that's the one that's laying. The other one looks the exact same, so I'm not going to show both of them. And then we have the ones that are grasping. And the one thing that kind of bothers me about the ones that are grasping, I have a 10-year-old child, so I am unfortunately very familiar with what's called dabbing, and it honestly looks like that's what this thing is doing, and I think dabbing is one of the stupidest things in the world. So to see the mini kind of doing that, or having it remind me of that, is a reason that I probably wouldn't want to use these myself. Another thing I should mention is that these came with a very strong plasticky smell, like it's still assaulting my nostrils even now. So you may want to let these air out if you plan on using them, or if strong smells bother you, which they kind of bother me, so I'm going to try not to let it affect me in this video, but it is a very, very strong plasticky smell that these things do give off. So just let them air out for a while, and a lot of that should go away. But anyway, up next we'll take a look at the standee and the candlesticks. And again, they're both the same, so I'm not going to show both off here, but they do have a little transparent, translucent flame, which is kind of cool. The only problem is, again, these sort of have a bit of a bend to them, but that's just probably, you know, the packaging or whatever. So you can probably, but these ones feels like you can straighten out if you try. So in fact, that actually even now looks better. So not too bad there. So there were two of those. Up next we've got Halaster's table full of stuff. So we've got a skull which is painted like the same color as the parchment and stuff. So it would have been kind of nice if they would have made that like white instead of more of like a peachy tone. But we got another candle there. The candle on this one does not have the translucent flame, unfortunately, so it just has the painted on flame, which is again the same color as the skull, and the same colors like the parchments and open pages and stuff like that. The jugs and stuff are, you know, pretty well done, I guess I'd say, and the table's not too bad. Legs are a little wonky, so you probably have to reset those. And again, not every set's necessarily going to have these warps or bends to them, so that is one thing to keep in mind. And sorry if I'm coughing or clearing my throat. We're sort of back into the middle of like another cold season here in Nova Scotia. We went from like plus 12s, plus 13s, plus 14s to back in the negatives again. And we've actually had snow the last couple of days. So it's just sort of, again, taken a bit of a toll. And when you have a child that's in public schools, it's basically like a breeding ground for sicknesses. But anyway, so I do apologize. It's just something that's kind of unfortunate, but it is the way that it is. So anyway, we've got the table there. Up next, we have the Pseudo dragon on a perch. And the paint job, you got one eye. Again, I don't know how well it's going to show up here, because like I said, a lot of these are really small, but you got one eye painted in, the other one's not. Pretty minimalist detail, but that's okay. It's not too bad. The perch is also very flimsy plastic, so you're probably going to have to do something to to straighten it, or just have it even look like it's sort of on a perch. Another thing is, it looks like it's supposed to have these metal rings on it, and I don't know how well they're going to show up, but they're not painted, even though they look very distinct. That could just be woodwork, and that's fine, but it looks like there's meant to be details there that were ignored. In fact, let me actually take a look at the box just to see. Yeah, see, the box actually has them painted black. And the Pseudo dragon has, you know, both eyes painted in. And just a lot more detail in the Pseudo dragon there. And I know that these are like, you know, hero shots and stuff like that. They're not going to be the way that the actual product looks. But it's kind of, again, disappointing that there's details that they have painted in here that were just completely untouched in the finished product. Which is something that's common, unfortunately, for these painted minis. Up next, we have the familiar cage. I don't think there's anything. I can't see a mini in there, so I don't think there's anything currently in there. The other thing is also very flimsy plastic for the legs. So you're probably going to have to do something with that as well. In fact, when I first went to try to pull this out, I was worried that I was going to break, like rip one of these off. So just something to be careful of there. Again, very flimsy plastic for the leg, and then you just got the gold cage on the table. Then we have the Balor claw. Looks like it's coming out of like a magical portal almost. So this one's not bad. Very minimalist, you know, sort of details, but not too bad. Actually, let's compare that. Actually, when you compare it to the image on the box, it's actually not that different. So there you go. So that's actually not too bad. And then up next we have our two smallest pieces. So here we have the Ghost Lantern, which is so tiny that I don't know if there's supposed to be a ghost in there or not, but it just looks like a regular lantern. Very small. This is something I'd be very worried about losing, to be honest, or just having it fall off the table, and who knows what happens to it. And then we have, and this is probably going to be hard to make out as well, but here we have the hand and eye of Vecna, which is kind of cool, although Vecna is a Greyhawk character, and the Dungeon of the Mad Mage takes place in the Forgotten Realms, so actually, you know, I mean, there's plane hopping and stuff like that, so it's not that it's outside of the realm of possibility to have the hand and eye of Vecna in the Forgotten Realms, but it makes more sense for it to be like in a Greyhawk adventure. It's still a cool mini to have, and if you ever wanted to use the hand and eye of Vecna, or these could be like reproductions, you know, you could do something like that as well. Although I think it would have been cooler to have something more Forgotten Realms oriented included, but still cool nonetheless. But again, very small, and the clear plastic dome actually makes it hard to make out any of the detail inside. So I can see like the green dot of the eye, but it's hard to make out the details of the hand. But still, you know, hand and eye of Vecna are some of my favorite artifacts of all time, so it's kind of cool that's in there. And then we just have our regular run-of-the-mill table with, again, sort of the janky warped leg. Up next, we'll look at the bookshelf with the dragon skull on it, the skull of a blue dragon. And some other bones. We've got some stuff on there, so, you know, not bad. Not too bad. And the back is just ordinary there. Then we got the Shield Guardian on the table. and the Shield Guardian is a completely separate piece that's glued on there. Actually pretty decent detail on this overall, so I think this one's actually pretty cool. Not much to say about it, but it is still pretty cool to have, you know, like the Shield Guardian mini looks really cool. And yeah, so you have the inactive Shield Guardian, and then you have Halaster's wardrobe. So you have some more books in there, some more spell items in there. You have a robe of many eyes, which is pretty cool. Looks like a robe of the Archmage or Archmagi. Not quite sure what the silvery blue one's supposed to be, but what's actually kind of neat about this one is the doors actually close. And I think that's, you know, kind of a nice little touch. The plastic's warped a little bit, so it doesn't, you know, seal properly, but you know, it's a dungeon, or it's a wardrobe that's probably in sort of like a damp dungeon. So you can explain some of these by just the fact that it's a damp area, human environment that warps the wood. But still kind of cool that you can open and close those nonetheless. So there we go. We'll just sort of slide these all back into frame. Why, that one's difficult to deal with. I'll just leave it like that. Alright, so those were the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Halaster's workshop. Is that right? Do I remember that right? Halaster's lab. Premium mini set from WizKids. So overall, there's some cool stuff in here. You know, there's some nice detail pieces that if you were running the adventure and you wanted to, you know, not just have these things sort of drawn on a dry erase grid or whatever, they're kind of cool. So I love the wardrobe. The wardrobe's probably my favorite overall, just because you can actually like open and close it. So you can have it closed and have the adventurers go in and only open it up and let them see what's inside if they ask to. But there's other things that are a little bit disappointing. Some of the paint jobs are less than great. The two ones that I could think of the most would have to be the Pseudo Dragon Perch and the workshop with stuff on it, because again, it wouldn't have killed them to make the flame on the candle orange instead of like peach toned. And the same thing for the skull, you know, having it be a white skull instead of having it be the same color as like the desiccated corpses. So for me, that's a little bit lazy. The books, the pile of books is kind of cool, but it has some of like the nicest detail and some of the most boring detail all rolled into one piece. Hand and Eye Vecna is cool to have something of, especially considering that they're some of my favorite artifacts. Summoning Circle is great. I love that one. But overall, the question that you have to ask yourself is, if you live in the US, is this worth $50? And if you live in Canada, is it worth significantly more than $50? And to me, the answer to that question is no. And that's sort of the biggest problem that I have with these premium sets that are coming out from WizKids, is that they are ridiculously expensive for what they are and how often you're likely to end up actually using them. The spell effects with the Wall of Fire and the Wall of Ice are probably still the guiltiest of being way overpriced for what they are. But this one's probably a close second to that, just because, you know, it's $50 for a lot of low-detailed minis that, how often are you going to actually use these? Now, again, you don't have to just limit yourself to using these for Halaster's lab. You can use these for just about any wizard's lab sort of thing. Although things like the Hand and Eye of Vecna and the Balor Claw are probably things that you want to limit the amount of times that you use. But it just doesn't feel like there's enough here for the money. Now, for $30, I think that this would be a great pickup. So for $30 US, you know, it's actually, in my opinion, a pretty good deal. For $40, you're kind of pushing the limits on it. But for $50 US, I think this again is just another thing that's kind of cool, but not something that I would recommend anybody pay full price for. And I actually even, you know, my friend who bought this has paid, and you know, way too much for a lot of these different things. And it's just, for me, even someone who is an avid, you know, collector of D&D, and for someone who thinks that, you know, Dungeon of the Mad Mage is one of the best adventure books that Wizards of the Coast has put out for 5th edition, I just don't see me wanting to pay the kind of money that I would have to pay to get this. So again, I think there's some cool things in here, and if you can find this for like half of the price that they're asking for, or even, you know, 2/3 of the price that they're asking for it, it might not be that bad. Like, I would pay $40 Canadian to have this set. I think that I would be willing to part with that amount of money. It would probably be the highest amount that I'd want to spend on it, but I just can't see me spending like $65 to $70 after taxes on something like this. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Again, I think that they're, you know, kind of cool. They make for some nice details, but the prices are just too high for me to really recommend this unless you can get it on sale. But let me know what you guys think of it in the comments below. If you've picked these up, have you used them in your particular games? And what do you think of the pricing structure? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's skewed too high? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Take care.